If you get nothing out of this whole conversation, I think this is the piece. You need to be collecting your audience. It's leads, community, conversation. That's building a list.
Hello, and welcome to PodBiz, the money behind the mic, a podcast about the business of podcasting. I'm Norma Jean Belenke of NJB Media, podcast and media strategy, marketing, and audience development.
And I'm John Kiernan of Podhouse Productions, your one-stop shop for everything podcast production, from ideation to editing and recording and so much more. We're your co-hosts on this journey into this world of podcasting as a business tool.
Whether you're launching your first show, scaling a podcast network, or building branded content for your company, PodBiz breaks down the strategies, tech, and mindset behind podcasting success.
We're bringing you insider tips, real talk with industry professionals, marketing tactics that actually work, and all the lessons that we've learned in the trenches.
Plus, we'll tackle the big questions like where's the money in podcasting, monetization, growth, SEO, and of course, how to stay human in a data-driven world. So if you're ready to go beyond the downloads and build real impact with your podcast,
then hit subscribe and let's get down to PodBiz.
Welcome to PodBiz. Today we're joined by Michelle Jackson, founder of Creators Getting Paid.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's get straight into it. Michelle, where's the money in podcasting?
I feel like that is a question that we're going to be working on for many years to come. I think it is very dependent on the type of project that you're doing. I think it's dependent on moxie, your own personal moxie, your willingness to take risks. There's a lot of answers. It's like an answer and a non-answer all at the same time. So there's money in podcasting. I think the question becomes, how do we monetize creative projects? And how do we divorce ourselves from how corporate believes we should monetize our projects? And so I think there's a lot of different answers in this.
Absolutely. And you work with really independent creators. So on that indie side, there is a little bit of an interesting thing, right? Of best practices versus like what works for each show and each person.
I want to kind of talk about what I do a little bit. And I speak with a lot of independent creators. I work with some independent creators, but I also work with organizations. So I think specific to podcasting, I do different things. I don't know that there's any one way to monetize a podcast. I think that's basically what I've come out of this whole experience with, is that each podcast is completely different. But there are some foundational elements that will help you to better approach the process of making money with your show, that I wish most people were aware of.
Absolutely. And what would you say those foundational elements are?
I think, first of all, just deciding that you want to monetize your show. so just being like unapologetic.
Be open make money. To receiving money. Yes.
Absolutely. Like, I want to make money with the work that I'm doing. And that kind of changes the framework of the planning behind the scenes. Assessing what your brand ecosystem is, like what are the components to what you're building, so that if you are monetizing your work, you can kind of feel out where that monetization could happen. And that could be audience, who you're speaking to. I was walking downtown on the way to where I'm at now, and I was listening to a podcast, of course,
as we do,
and
yeah,
as one does. And the person who was being interviewed was a CFO, and so he's building a brand and conversations around how people could better monetize their companies, like how they can better, optimize the work that they're doing, like all this CFO talk. I am not a CFO, and it's interesting because through what he's doing, he's attracting all of these folks who are looking to learn more from him so that they can better do the work that they're doing in their corporate careers. So he's been able to really monetize and optimize that audience. You could be doing a fan fiction, great Game of Thrones show, right? Where Arya Stark, and I actually think that this actually is really happening, where you are exploring where Arya Stark goes beyond Westeros. I'm convinced that this is really a show that's happening because I saw some chatter about it. And maybe you're that person who's creating a podcast around her adventures. And that could be, of course, there's copyright because Game of Thrones is obviously copyrighted. But maybe you've just developed a map of beyond, where she, like Westeros and where she went, and you're selling the map, right? And you design this whole like creative experience with Arya, and maybe you're having people pay for that experience. Like there's a lot of different ways that you could kind of explore what that could look like. The other thing is people need to have their audience. They need to own their audience. I think this is something that if you get nothing out of this whole conversation, I think this is the piece. You need to be collecting your audience. It's leads, community, conversation. That's building a list. In order to grow your show, you need to be able to send your show to the folks that they're not available at 10 a.m. Mountain Time or what have you. You need to be in constant communication and conversation with the people that you would like to listen or watch the show that you're building out. And building a list, I think, is really a key foundational element for any creative project, whether it's a podcast, whether it's, a coaching practice, if that's something you do, or what have you. Having leads, having folks that that you can communicate with, regardless of what happens with, social media, if you're active on that. That is, I think, a key foundational element to a monetized brand. And quite frankly, part of what you can negotiate if you're deciding to monetize with a company, like if you're doing a brand partnership, or maybe you're not doing a brand partnership, maybe you're doing affiliate marketing, maybe you're deciding to sell something like a private podcast stream. You need leads, you need people, you need a community to sell that to. So building a list, to me, is the number one thing you should be focused on. I will never forget, this is like hilarious to me in retrospect. So I began building my content creation brand, if you will, in the personal finance space, but I had no money. Like I was broke. That's the whole point. A lot of people like get into these different spaces because they're trying to solve a problem or they're trying to share what's going on with them. So I had become a financial caregiver unexpectedly. And as a result of that happening, I had bad finances that got worse, right? Like I just wasn't equipped to manage all this. And everything's fine now. But at the time, like everything went to shit, basically, pardon my French. So I started really reading and like being very fascinated by personal finance content at that time. Like I loved the story that everyone was sharing with me about their journeys, with me, the audience member, about their journeys to bettering their finances, and the fact that it was a journey. Like it wasn't like, today my finances were bad, but then tomorrow they were great. Like that wasn't what was happening. It was like the good, the bad, and the ugly. But over time, once I started creating content, I became friends with people who also became quite well known and also built lucrative brands. And one of the things that the number one thing that I noticed people doing, like years later, like me looking back, they were all building lists. All of them. They were all doubling down on having their own list. And sometimes I think, like, do I regret that I didn't do that? I don't, because I also think that the project and the energy have to be like the right timing for you as the creator. I don't know if the previous iteration of my projects were the ones that I would have wanted to build in that way. You know what I mean? The current ones, that's a totally different conversation. I'm like, let's make the money. Let's do the things. But look,
show me the money.
I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, show me the money.
Absolutely. I definitely think it's something where, hindsight is 2020. And I'm guessing, if you had to start over today, that's the thing you would do differently, right? Is to start an email list for each project.
With the projects now, but not with those projects, because I had to go on the journey and learn what I enjoyed, learned community building. So I like that I have the wisdom now to build out the projects that I'm building out now. So
Yeah, I think it's important to really embrace our journeys, whatever happens, right? There's always going to be moments that are sticky or that we wish we had done something different, but that's where we learn. I think that that's really important. And, now in the days of social media, especially, on the career level with LinkedIn and that professional space, it's like you can make no mistakes. And then when you do, it's a lesson. Get ready for story time on LinkedIn. I went on vacation and here's what I learned about sales strategy. And so I think it is really important to just embrace our journeys in that way. And it's not all sunshine and roses. And also we're going to glean gold from, everything that we do, no matter how successful it is. I think that that's a really important factor. I also have to say email newsletter lists have been one of the top community building tips from guests here on PodBiz. We've had so many guests talk about the value of email newsletters because they're not sensitive to algorithms, right? We're all kind of slaves to the algos, right? When you think about it, a lot of the time I'm so hot on LinkedIn and everybody's seeing my content and everybody's liking PodBiz and everybody's subscribing to the page and sharing the content. And then other times nobody sees it. Right. And so that's when the power of that email newsletter list comes in, because those people are people who've actively consented to being part of your community. It's going to go straight to their inbox and it's not going to get filtered out, by everybody else LinkedIn posts from 3 weeks ago. So.
I want to kind of say something or share a point of clarification. So you can have a newsletter, which is a branded communication. It may or may not be something that you're sending via email, right? Like it could be that you've designed something on LinkedIn if you're active there, or YouTube, or, Substack, Ghost, Beehive. Like you could, depending on how you want to do it. To me, a newsletter could be a branded communication, and how you deliver that is up to you. Having an email list, though, I think is kind of a similar yet separate thing, because you may have an email list that's not branded. It's just a way that you're communicating with your people. And so knowing how to build funnels or tagging your people as they come into your ecosystem, email service providers provide a lot of that tech know-how, if you will, like all these bells and whistles so that you can better serve your audience. Newsletter platforms don't always have that. I have a newsletter, but I also use a service to send out emails separate from the newsletter platform. And I've always done that, actually. So right now I'm starting to use a different platform for the emails specifically. So I'm kind of like testing that out, because the challenge with newsletter platforms is actually their referral and recommendation feature. It's both good and bad, right? Yeah. So I love when people are referred to me. I love when people shout me out. But in these newsletter ecosystems, people are like scrolling fast. Maybe they sign up for someone's newsletter. They see their recommendations. They're like, that sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good. Like them meeting me, it's like a blind date. And I have to like make my way through all this noise of all the other people that they may be engaged with.
Absolutely. And, I know you're speaking about platforms such as Substack, right? Where when you sign up for somebody's Substack, that you automatically are like, oh, you followed this person. Would you like to follow these 3 other people? There's a lot of options built in. And I think that's where really good funnels come into place, right? They're not necessarily getting the stock standard newsletter when they join. They're getting, hey, welcome to my community. Hey, I'm so glad you're here. And I think setting the tone within your community is super important, right? That's always been something that's really important, that uniqueness of, hey, you came to what I'm creating and I'm so glad you're here, and here's what you're going to get. And here's, what you can expect. And here's what I'm so excited to share with you. Absolutely.
So I feel like that part of the conversation isn't discussed enough amongst newsletter creators. I'm like, so for me, with creators getting paid, first of all, it's not a newsletter, it's a community. So I am building out a community. What I've decided is to call the newsletter piece something different. It's called Are You Paid Yet? and so I was like, let's brand that out. Yeah. So that I can direct people to that, and they can then filter into creators getting paid from the newsletter over, or if they're in, because I host mine on Substack, if they're already in a Substack ecosystem, then there's a whole like way that people are finding me from that ecosystem. But I'm really trying to get people who are completely unaware of Substack. Like, it's like when people are blogging and people are like, "Oh, I've never read a blog before." I'm like, "Have you read something on Google?" Because 9 times out of 10, if you've read something on Google, that was a blog post, right? Most people don't know that they're interacting with a certain type of platform.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, understanding that I need to get you into my ecosystem off of any of these platforms. I need to own it, and then move you over to the project that I'm working on. I think it means that the community members are a lot warmer, like the leads are better, than just focusing on any of these newsletter platforms, which are good for discoverability, but I think for like monetization and building
I
out
always think in
money.
terms of monetization, it's always in the creator's best interest to have more control. Once people enter
Yes.
your ecosystem as a creator, as an independent creator or a network or a brand, you want people on your turf. I think that that's something that has been consistent. And newsletters are definitely more owned than social channels, right? Because they're algo dependent. And so, I think it's how do you get people into your community on your terms as quickly and in as large a volume for your niche as possible. Absolutely. Well, Michelle, how did you get into the podcasting industry and working with specifically, not necessarily exclusively podcasting, but with creators?
So again, when I started with personal finance, I was blogging and I loved it. I still love it. Actually, I love the written word, but I felt like there were conversations that needed to be had where you could hear the conversation. And so I randomly was like, I'm going to start a podcast. Because of course I am. Why not? I apparently have the time and energy. And so I started like, I don't know, it was like low key, maybe a little crazy. And then I started my podcast. It's been rebranded. It's on its 4th name throughout the years. So it's currently called Your American Money for that specific project. I have more than one podcast at this point. So specific to like this conversation, Creators Getting Paid has a podcast.
Yep.
And it's a great way for me to have conversations around the business of being a creator that I feel like aren't being had in other spaces. Like the people I'm talking to are never going to make it onto Rogan, which is great. And so I just wanted to have different conversations and to approach my creativity around the audio in a different way. And so, yeah, I've been podcasting forever at this point. I feel like at least 10 years. I don't even know. It's been that long. Like it's been long enough for me not to remember when I started. You know how like some people remember all the dates? I'm not that person.
No,
I'm I don't remember.
I think sometimes when something, you have that repetition, once you've done something enough, it's kind of built into just your identity in a lot of ways. Absolutely. And what would you say is one key move or metric or even a mindset that's made the biggest impact on your career working with creators and your podcast and the success of also the clients that you work with who, like you've said, are independent creators, but also sometimes are, larger organizations?
Well, I think you need to actively listen. So if you're doing client work, which I try not to do a lot of client work, I'm trying to build up the assets within my project. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation. But when you are working with clients or people are coming to what you're selling, you need to actively listen to what they're saying, what their issues are, what they care about, what excites them. And then that should inform the creative process of what you're designing. I just went on a rant on Substack actually a second ago, and I was like, most people's content is really boring, and it's because they're like terminally online and they're just not like taking risks. So I think the other part is just take risks, and probably take a break. So my personal finance project, I put on hiatus. Like there was just the well of creativity ran dry. I've won awards for it.
No, Michelle, that's such a great point because not every podcast is meant to live forever, right? Some podcasts deserve a pause. They deserve a break. They deserve to assess their episode frequency. But some podcasts should end, right? And I think having that natural end and honoring it versus burning out and pulling from a well that is dry doesn't serve anybody. Doesn't serve the creator, doesn't serve the community you serve, doesn't serve any sponsors you have. And so it's really important to honor what we're actually excited about, right? I think that excitement has real value and it's understated. It's underappreciated a lot of the time. So following, hey, I'm really excited about this. Hey, I'm really driven to make this content as an independent creator, I think is really important as well.
Let's be clear, like I've recorded that show for years and I love that show. I've won 3 awards for that show.
Congratulations.
And thank you, including a lifetime achievement in the personal finance space. So it's, it's gotten accolades and I just was like, I can't, and how it is right now, I can't work on it right now. Like I just needed to pause. And because I paused that project, I had the energy to really like get creators getting paid up and running because I was able to shift my focus. What's interesting is that personal finance project, it can sometimes be a really heavy project because like I talk about policy and pop culture and polarization. So it's a lot going on. I have decided to not reboot it, but like start the show again with a completely different approach to that podcast. I have never seen a creator in the content in the personal finance space do a show like what I'm about to do. And I would not have come up with that idea if I'd been actively working on the project. There's no way I would have come up with this idea. The other thing is the need for that content right now is actually increasing exponentially because as we know, there's a lot going on here. We're not going to get into it. There's just a lot going on. And so now I am replenished enough to even consistently do work on that project and give it the energy and the love and serve my community who follows that work in the way that I want to be of service to them. So I'm so glad that I took the time off. I took 2 years off, really. And now I'm going to do this huge project that I'm going to crowdfund. Actually, I've decided to crowdfund the project. I'm like 99% like we're crowdfunding this because it's a lot of work. I want it to be a certain way. I don't think it's ideal to have that many brand partners with. It might be difficult right now to get brand partners for what I'm trying to do, just in general. And so I'm like, let's let the people pay for this project. And I've actually spoken to a lot of creatives doing different types of projects where that has been the way that they've opted to fund a really unique to them, but important projects.
Well, I think also, what we're seeing in terms of crowdsourcing is not just on the front end in terms of podcasting, right? It's really great because people can support, the launch of a show and be part of it from day one. And we're also seeing some really great subscription models with Apple Podcast subscriptions, with Patreon, with Substack even, and so I think it's going to be a really exciting ride for you in terms of this new personal finance vertical, which I have to say, it's actually one of my niche interests that I don't talk about publicly. I love personal finance podcasts. I love them specifically. And this is just like a share about Norma Jean. I love travel hacking.
Oh yeah. I have a lot of friends who are like deep into that.
I'm very into travel hacking and I'm very into retirement fund maximization. So those are my
Are you into fire? Are you into fire?
I love the fire, folks. I gotta live in the moment also.
Yeah.
You never know. Life is short. I cannot live on 10% of my income right now.
I'm a slow fire person for that very reason. I'm like, I'm going to work for a while. I have no problem with it. But I know a lot of fire people who like hyper optimize their engineering jobs.
Absolutely.
But I'm
And for
not an
everybody,
engineer.
no, exactly. And for everybody listening, it is a special niche of mine, a special interest, but FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. And it's a niche community of personal finance people that really spend as little money as possible for as many years as they need. Usually, I think the previous number was to get to about $1 million and then retire and live off of that and, kind of take a job, like a coastal, usually software programming job, make your money over 10 years and then move somewhere else in the country, in the United States, and live off of that money and not work. Yeah. So that's the FIRE movement traditionally. And there's different, there's fat FIRE, there's slow FIRE, there's all these different acronyms around it. But anyways, enough about my special interest. That is very exciting as well. And it's interesting to see how, community is helping support independent creators. And, I want to hear a little bit more on the creators getting paid side, because you really empower creators to create those communities.
So creators getting paid, for those of you who are new to me, basically is a project where I ask creators how they make money. And then I share that information. And I ask primarily Black and Brown and a few allied folks how they're doing what they're doing. And part of the reason why goes back to that story I shared with my friends who are making all this money in the personal finance space as creators, and me just watching them grow and just trying to figure out, like, what is there a formula? Like,
right.
What are you
What's
doing?
the magic formula that I'm missing? And I think also, for a lot of independent creators out there, it's something where you're looking around and you're like, what memo did I not read? Right? Like,
Exactly.
how is this person living off of this? And sometimes somebody has another job that supplements. They were able to get a corporate sponsorship. There's so many different ways that people fund projects.
I think that there's two different things I do want to point out. So with podcasting is tricky because you're likely going to have to do like a bespoke collaboration with a company or organization if that's what you want to do. If you have your own products, you could just sustain your own projects by always sharing what you do. So a great example is Amy Porterfield. So Amy Porterfield, very, 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 very well-known content creator. She runs a project that used to be called Online Marketing Made Easy. And in every single podcast episode, she would always share like a helpful tool, that kind of thing. And she was always building her list. And so you would sign up, you would get that tool, and you were in her ecosystem. And then she had all these other products that she sold. So everything went back to what she was doing. Podcasters, to me, because I started as a blogger, I think that they're very difficult to get to believe that they can actually monetize their work, partly because they only focus on the show. They don't have oftentimes a website. They don't oftentimes have a community. They oftentimes don't have a list. So it's difficult for them to imagine how to monetize because they're very focused on the show. One of the interesting things that's happened in the last couple of years is actually video podcasting, which for me, I feel like is a talk show. Okay, I'm sorry, I just do. I'm like, it's a talk show.
Everybody has opinions on video, it or hate it. Here we are.
But it's fine. It's irrelevant. The point is, people enjoy it. I actually watch a show. There's one that I do watch called The Pivot. I'm obsessed with it. There's 3 Black gentlemen who used to be professional athletes, and they run this show called The Pivot, and it's so well done. I think part of the reason why I don't always love video is I feel like sometimes the hosts aren't as well prepared as you are. And that's the critique, right? So you're very well prepared and I feel like it's cohesive and we're going to have a great conversation. I think sometimes people wing it too much. And so that's TV. This to me is substantive and we're getting a lot out of this, I hope. The Pivot is interesting because they have this whole ecosystem that they've built out. And so I think it's easier for podcasters, whether they are video focused or audio, to be like, oh, wait, there's all these things we can do. Before Shannon Sharp messed up everything that he did and blew up his life like an idiot, as one deserves, he too was an example of building out this brand ecosystem. And so I think nowadays it's easier to be like, when you're talking to podcasters, here are the possibilities of what you can do. But it was really difficult for a lot of years. In fact, Creators Getting Paid used to be called Podcasters Getting Paid. And I rebranded it because it was just so difficult to get podcasters to believe that they could monetize the work that they could. I rebranded it. It's now a vertical on the project. It's now just a vertical. But I was just like, I have to grow my brand, and me trying to argue with you, like me trying to convince you of a thing that I've seen for years, I'm going to go insane. And so I decided to change and rebrand the project. I'm really glad that I did, but now I think everything has its timing. So I'm glad that I still have the vertical within my project called Podcasters Getting Paid, but it was very difficult to get people to believe. But partly, if you don't have a website, if you don't have a YouTube channel, if you don't have, a list, how can you imagine that you could do anything beyond what you see Rogan doing, right? So another example would be Meghan Markle. Love her or hate her, I don't care if you like her or not, but she was really smart because she collaborated with Netflix. She built a relationship and a rapport with them. She has designed both audio as well as video projects. I would love to know how big the list she has for her different projects are. That's part of the reason why she sells out her as ever products. She has a massive list. So she knows what she needs to produce and not be in the red, right? And so, I'm working on a case study for her because
I love it.
I find her so,
fascinating. I mean, it's very interesting, right? Like, independent of what any of that content looks like, she's got a following. And
exactly.
And you're right. I think it's something where even if you create content where everybody has an opinion for good or for bad, because I think a lot of her shows had a bit of a backlash culturally.
Really? I mean, okay. I mean, it depends on who you are. For me, it was great.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I think her podcast was not that well received, I believe. Like, I think it.
No, it was great. I think it did.
I like the content, but I think commercially it didn't do as well as they thought it would. I think that's what it was.
I feel like in the US, it did really well. Whether or not it did well outside the US, that's a different conversation. But given the fact that it was number one, it was number one for a lot. Yes, it did very well.
Okay, we got
partly also
because
of COVID. Think about when it was
I remember listening to that
show
did really
well.
Just thinking it sounded really overproduced, but maybe that's just me. I mean, I think
of course it was overproduced.
It was in a wave of celebrity podcasts. It was definitely a wave. For some reason, I think I must have just blanked and blocked that out that she was number one. But even her new Netflix show, there was a lot of critique about how it was unrelatable.
It was great. What are you talking about? Like,
there was a lot of discourse online. She wasn't even in her house. It wasn't her real house.
You know what? This is why I'm doing the case study. It is so interesting to me how different audiences perceived what happened. I think you being in Europe also is impacting that perception. I'm going to be really candid.
No. I watched her episodes when I was in the US with friends.
I'm going to say this very, very honestly. Black women don't feel that way at all. Like Black women, how we perceived the show was completely different, and that was actually a huge talking point. That's why I do the case studies. And so it is hilarious to me to hear this from people because I'm like, it was number one on Netflix. Like, someone's watching it. Like, the view hours, regardless of how people feel, the viewing hours are huge. And I'm sorry, most of these shows are produced off-site. Why the hell would I have someone in my house?
I totally agree.
Like,
but I think
so
she portrayed
weird.
it as being in her own home. I think that was the critique.
No. Why would I have people in my house? I don't even want people in my house that I don't know. Like, what? Like, what? Get out of my house. Like, you like, my house is on a need to know basis. You don't need to know. You don't need to know. So this is why I do, like, this is the type of content that I like, though. I like this kind of,
I do have to say, I'm very neutral on her content, to be transparent. And also, a lot of women that I know just really didn't like it and were really triggered by it. I listened to her podcast. I watched the latest show. I watched the Oprah interview. I mean, fabulous. Yeah. But I feel like that was...
I did not see that. Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah, no. I feel like the Oprah interview was also just more about like how great an interviewer Oprah is. Of course, you know, the content had its own story, but you know, for a generation of people who hadn't really seen Oprah like in full interview mode, it was like, oh, she's back. Oh, so good.
Oh, Oprah. I have a lot of feelings about Oprah right now, but I think it's interesting. I am kind of vaguely neutral, not neutral with Megan. Like, I'm not like a stan. So that I want to be clear. I'm not one of her stans, but what I would say is I think a lot of the like reaction is very interesting to observe because I think it's so ridiculous because half of these celebrities are doing the same thing. I just think that Megan pisses people off. That's it.
I think that she does. I definitely think that she does elicit.
Megan is the brown Gwyneth Paltrow. That's what it is. She's like Goop.
Yeah, and Gwyneth Paltrow, I have to say the same thing.
That's why I'm saying
neutral on her content, and also it's very controversial to a lot of different people. And absolutely, I think that's a great critique. Absolutely.
And actually 100%. Just saying it out loud, I'm like, I need to write that down.
Yes. I can't believe you came up with it here on PodBiz. Well, Michelle, I want to ask you next. What's something that people don't know about what you do?
Oh, I think that's a great question. I've enjoyed this conversation, by the way. I like these kinds of like, what do they not know that I do? I don't know that I talk enough about how much I experiment behind the scenes with my own business and brand. I am not trying to work excessively for clients. So I know we kind of, you reference clients. I have some nonprofit, occasionally corporate clients, but the goal of being in a digital business and brand for me is not to be consulting like that. So the end goal is really what people don't know, which is to build out a sustainable brand that makes money when I sleep through the products that I've developed in the back end of the business. And that has been a pain in my ass. and I want that to be very like clear. I have multiple projects. Any person who's like, I have multiple projects online, they're crazy because really, if you have one project and you hyper focus on that, it's going to grow faster.
No, I totally agree. As someone who used to, before my podcasting days, I had many different projects and it was very hard to rise the tide on all of them. I developed an online following for drawing an original cartoon every day for over 3 years. I made music. I had a podcast. I had a company that ran in-person empowerment retreats for women. It was all at once. And so I absolutely know what you're talking about. I think, and we see this a lot in podcasting, where your attention goes is where your initiative is really going to blossom and grow.
Exactly.
And so for people who have that focus, I had a lot of friends say to me, hey, maybe just focus on one thing this year. And I was like, yeah, but which one? And that was kind of in between and before my professional career became primarily podcasting. It's definitely something where you see the diffusion of attention affect what you're doing. So for everybody out there who's an independent creator, it's okay to really go hard on your niche. It's really important to go hard on one project and make that a priority for now. It's okay, like Michelle said, to sunset a show so that you can have that creativity to build what is really going to serve you next. I think absolutely.
Yeah, I love hearing that you've done all these really beautiful creative projects, by the way.
I'm going to have such a vulnerability hangover when this episode comes out. Oh my God.
No. I like that because I feel like then that means I was safe to talk to. You know what I mean? Like, I want for people to feel comfortable, just like let it all hang out. Like, are we going to delete that one too? But anyway,
we're going to delete that. Absolutely. John, we're cutting that out.
Cut that out, John. So with having multiple projects, the thing that I've learned is it's better to focus on one thing, but you could do multiple, but you have to be really clear about what is the end game for each project,
and what they're all
right?
feeding. Absolutely.
And like that, I think has been an interesting experience for me, because you have to make a decision. Like, is this what we're going to do? Are these things what we're going to do? And if you decide one or the other, that's totally fine. But understand that if you do multiple things, you're going to get to the end slower. And that has been my decision. I'm like, I want to fuel my curiosity. I want to do different things. That means that the getting to the end that I see for each project is going to look a little different. Like, it's going to take time. And I've just made that decision and choice. Do I recommend that for everyone? I think that's up to you, but I also feel like it's very important to be candid that if I only focused on creators getting paid, clearly it would grow much
Clearly it
faster.
would pay you as the creator.
I know, right?
Absolutely.
So it is what it is.
Well, Michelle, it's been such a pleasure. We always ask everyone one last question here on PodBiz. What are you most excited about coming up with in the podcasting industry?
I feel like right now in the podcasting industry, there's a huge opportunity for people to be truly passionate and creative with the work that they're doing. I feel like for a while now, we've had a lot of formulaic content that's quite boring and really on board. Like, I'm just so tired of boring content. And I'm excited to see people be super creative about the things that they care about, that they're sharing on video, that they're sharing on audio. Maybe you are into AI. I'm not necessarily into AI, but I've seen some really cool integrations of creativity with AI where you're having a conversation and then you print out a zine, which is the total antithesis of AI. But maybe you create an audio or a digital drama using a tool like that. I've seen people do that and it's insane, where they have a photo, like an anime photo, and that's where their poetry lives. And then it complements the show that they have. Like, I want for people, if you're going to use the different tools that are out there, I want you to have fun with the tools that are available to us and complement the other pieces of your work with that expansive, amazing creative space that's out there that you can use all these different tools for. So just have fun, be creative. If it's not coming to you creatively, take a break. Yeah. Take a break. You're creating free content for people to consume. Why is it that you can't take a break? That's crazy. So for the most part, right? And the other content you can just market until you're ready to share it again. So
absolutely. Well, Michelle Jackson, founder of Creators Getting Paid, thanks for joining us here on PodBiz.
Thank you for having me. And I do want to talk to you about all your projects.